mute first of all.
They'll want you to mute it. Keep it on mute. Keep it that way.
Well, good evening, everybody. Hopefully you can all hear me. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Yay, superb. Good to see you this evening. I'm just running through some more checks here, and I'll be with you in a few minutes' time. You can unmute yourselves if you want to have a chat amongst yourselves. Feel free to do so. Good to see so many familiar names here as well. I hope that you're all doing well and looking forward to a return to flying on Monday. Well, at least solo flying on Monday. The weather isn't exactly playing ball for early next week, but it does improve during the middle to latter stages of next week. I'll be recording the flyer forecast a little later, and that'll be online a little bit later on for Flyer Club members, and then it'll be online on Facebook, YouTube, and the usual channels tomorrow morning. But hopefully you can all hear me okay. I'm just going to do a few more settings here, and then I'll be back with you. I'll be back with you in just a moment.
Oh, data fills up, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was making. Do you want that?
No, I don't know. No.
It's 19 hours.
Well, good evening, everybody. Great to see you this evening. Thank you for joining me for this Let's Go Flying webinar. I guess we're all a bit excited about the prospects for what we've got ahead as we start flying again. Let me just sort out our sound here. Give me just 1 second so you don't hear me coming back to you. All these various electronic devices all over the place. It just gets quite confusing, doesn't it? Okay, nice to see you all here. Hopefully you're all excited for next week and what's about to happen. It looks like we're back in the air. I haven't heard any announcements that we're not going to be, so keep fingers crossed, and we're going to be back in the air before you know it. The idea for this evening is just to take a few minutes of your time, just to start familiarising ourselves again with weather. as we go flying. It may well be that it's something that you've kind of put to one side through the winter months when we haven't been able to fly, although no doubt a few of you have been doing some maintenance flights, or if you're on the professional pathway, you'll have been doing that. So the idea is just to try and get us back into thinking weather. Now, those of you members of the Flyer Club know that I did a webinar with them a couple of weeks ago, just giving a few tips on forecasting, etc. This one's going to be a little bit different in that I'm just going to run through what we should be doing as we prepare to fly either next week or on the 12th of April. It won't take long. As I say, it's going to be about 30 minutes. Happy to answer any questions you've got. You can put those questions in the chat window. Probably the best way to do it, because we've got so many people online with us. We've got sort of 80 plus joining us via Zoom. I think we've got 100 people up to the maximum registration on Zoom, and also we've got people joining us on YouTube as well. So feel free, put your questions in the chat box, either on Zoom or on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, just be aware that there is a slight delay. It's a delay of about 30 seconds on YouTube. So just be aware that I won't see the questions immediately. If there's something that I really have missed out, or a burning question that you want to ask, feel free to jump in and ask it as we go along. Or if you think you can wait to the end, that's absolutely fine as well. What I'm going to do, a little bit of YouTube etiquette, is I'm going to mute everybody off now, because as you've probably found out, I mean, we've all become Zoom aficionados, haven't we, over the last year. You know that if the dog barks or the doorbell rings or anything goes on, it flips to those as the main speaker. So I'm just going to mute everybody off. So it always feels very rude doing that, making you all shut up like that, but that's what I've just done. So if you do want to ask me a burning question, then you have to unmute. But if that can wait to the end, that would be just superb. As I say, you can ask the questions through the chat box, either on Zoom or the chat box through YouTube. Okay, then. So as I say, really what we're going to do this evening, I'm just going to talk you through some of the main areas where we can get weather information from, perhaps give you a little bit of an insight into how I go about doing a little bit of weather planning when I'm planning to fly, and also just introduce you to or reintroduce you to the more familiar places where you're going to be accessing weather information from, and perhaps show you one or two that you haven't been familiar with in the past. So first up, this is all completely free of charge, as you know, but I've been raising money for the last year for the Big Issue, and thanks to pilots like yourselves, we've raised over £2,000 for the Big Issue, and we were one of, I think, Big Issue game changers of 2020 because of that. So thank you everybody who's donated. We've done other projects as well, raising money for the Big Issue, and the reason that I chose the Big Issue is that obviously in lockdown all the shops have been shut, we haven't been able to go into town, etc., and so their sellers who we see on the streets have not been able to get any income. So that's why we've been raising funds for Big Issue throughout. And some people have made bigger donations as well. And it's a case really of, if you can chuck £1 in, please do so. If you can put more in, please do so. And if you're a company, again, feel free to donate as well. And that's exactly what Cav OK Aviation did for us. And I'm really pleased to say that they'll be joining us this evening, as well as many of their hour building pilots as well. And thanks to Cav OK, they made a donation into the Big Issue as well. So big thank you to them, and thank you to anybody who feels able to donate. So the link for that is at the bottom of the screen. I unashamedly push this to you now. The link for it is at the bottom of the screen. For those of you joining us on Zoom, it's in the email that I sent you earlier on. For those of you on YouTube, I'll put the link in the chat box a little later as well, but you can see it there at the bottom of the screen. So anything that you can give is more than welcome. Okay, so weather's a huge topic, as you know, and those of you, and I know there's a few of you here who've been to weather school, you will know that I like to condense it down into nice bite-sized manageable chunks. So as a pilot, you can fly rather than spending all of your time looking at weather. We're going to have so many things to think about during the next few weeks as we get back to flying, as we get to the aircraft again, as we start familiarizing ourselves. Goodness me, it's there's going to be a lot on our plates, isn't there? And weather is one of those that's kind of in there, and you probably think to yourself, okay, I've started to look at the apps on my phone. I'm starting to listen out for the TV forecast extending a little bit into next week. You'll see my flyer forecast from tomorrow with the details of the weather for next week. Those of you who don't see that, by the way, if you go to flyer.co.uk, you can see my weekend forecast there, and also it's on my Facebook page and the YouTube channel and the Instagram channel as well, all free of charge, so you can watch those forecasts. And also you're going to be wanting to look at charts yourself and start to get a feel for what the weather is going to do. So weather's a massive subject. So what I thought that I would do is look at what it says in the Skyway Code, because there's a new edition of the Skyway Code being released. Those of you who've not seen it, if you go to the CAA website, and in fact, just put in CAA Skyway Code, and you can download a copy of this manual. And I would urge everybody, as we start to fly again next week, to have a read through this. It's invaluable and just nice bite-sized chunks of information. And actually within the Skyway Code, there's a pretty decent section on weather. They talk about some organization called the Met Office. Never heard of it, but they talk about the Met Office and the charts that are on their website. Unfortunately, they don't talk about any other of the websites that are out there that probably many of you are familiar with. But it's a very, very good reintroduction, I think, to starting to plan for our flights and looking at weather. And what I find really interesting is that they've condensed in that Skyway Code the information they think pilots should be really familiar with before undertaking a flight. And this is taken directly from the Skyway Code. And it says that pilots should have a good working knowledge of the conditions associated with common weather features, including warm and cold front, high and low pressure systems, and thunderstorms. Now, most of that I absolutely agree with. And I think that they're spot on with what they're saying there about having a good working knowledge of them. I mean, really, I'm going to go through the charts here and show you most of those features. With high and low pressure, you basically need to know that high pressure generally is good weather. Low pressure is generally poor weather, although this is weather. And so you will never get a definitive answer when it comes to weather. There'll always be a possible or a maybe. But actually, I think that's a good summary of the three things that we as pilots probably need to know most about. Now, they also go on to say that it's these items that you can get from, they say, the Met Office website, but they're available elsewhere as well, or some of them are available elsewhere as well. These are the items that you should be looking at before you fly. Now, I know that for some of us, you probably look at that list and think, goodness me, if I looked at that, I wouldn't actually be flying anywhere. But actually, most of it you can look at in a minute or two to get a feel for what the weather is actually going to do. Again, those of you who've been to weather school will know that I spend a lot of time looking at the surface charts, because they are the most invaluable guide for pilots in the UK and Europe in deciding whether weather is going to be flyable or not in the days ahead. Of course, we've got the familiar 214, 215 there. We're going to take a look at those in just a second. Interesting one for those of you flying in Europe. And if you are planning to fly in Europe during this year, although some hope at the moment, it looks like perhaps we should say flying in Europe next year, start familiarising yourself with forms 414 and 415. They're the equivalent of 214 and 215, but actually cover much of northwestern Europe. So it's worthwhile just having a look at those, particularly, I mean, even if we can't fly into Europe this year, particularly when there are severe weather events taking place in Europe, just familiarise yourself with what they look like on forms 414 and 415. Of course, our TAFs and METARs will be back up to speed with those. And again, urge you to start looking at those again to get familiar with the codes that are used in the METARs and TAFs. yes, they are decoded. I mean, Sky DRAM does that for us quite nicely now, doesn't it? And there are other apps that you can see on the web that will decode into plain language. But if you can still keep yourself familiar with the coded version of METARs and TAFs, I actually think it's quicker to read, because you can pick out what you're actually looking for far more rapidly. So if you're looking for a Prob 30 or a Prob 40, that immediately highlights something that you as pilots need to be aware of. So again, just familiarize yourself again with the basic codes of those TAFs and METARs. Satellite and radar imagery, again, we're going to take a brief look at that in just a second. And then something that they've not amended, it says they're AirMets. Well, we don't get AirMets anymore. We now get GAMETs via the Met Office website, and also the SIGMETs they recommend that we take a look at too. So with that in mind, let's go down that list as closely as we can. And I'm going to start off by just having a look at the surface pressure charts. Now, again, for those of you that are familiar with weather school, you'll be more than familiar with the surface charts and basically how much I love these darn things, because I think that as pilots, this is the information that we really need. And you know what? For much of the time, actually, the information contained on these charts is all that we need to know to be able to make a decision about whether we're going to go flying or not. They really are that useful, because they help us to do things like identifying whether a front is strong or whether a front is weak. And by a strong front, I mean a front that's probably going to stop most of us flying. And I'm thinking here in terms of mainly flying in visual meteorological conditions. So for what most of us will be wanting to fly, they enable us to be able to see whether a front is strong or weak. It enables us to be able to see what the air mass is doing, where the air is coming from, where it's going to. And once you've identified that, you can quite happily make a forecast based on the information that you're seeing. So these are the basic charts in front of us. And we're lucky in the UK. The UK Met Office produce these charts 24 hours a day and update them regularly throughout the day. So we're really lucky to have access to these charts, and I'd urge you to get used to use them. And I'll show you where you can get them from in just a moment. So first up, we have an analysis chart. Now, an analysis chart is a statement of current weather conditions at that time, and it always tells us what time those current conditions are valid for. And if we look in the top left hand corner, you'll see there that it states that this is an analysis chart valid 1200 UTC on the 24th of March. So this was an analysis for what's gone on outside this afternoon. So it's not a forecast, it's a statement of current conditions. Now, what I would say to you is that before you go flying, and several days before you go flying, so perhaps some of you are considering flying now on Monday, before you go flying, check out these charts. You might say to yourself, well, Simon, why would I want to know what the weather's doing now when I want to fly on Monday? It's because weather doesn't just happen. It's not in a flash. It doesn't just appear. Weather happens for a reason. It's part of a fluid system. So if you can familiarize yourself with what weather pattern we have been in and what weather pattern we are likely to go into, it will improve your awareness, your broad awareness of weather. And that's why I say look at these analysis charts. So whenever you get one of these charts, and again, apologies to those of you who've been to weather school, because you'll know this is a familiar story. First thing to do is just to look where low and high pressure is centered. And as you know, the winds rotate in an anti-clockwise direction around areas of low pressure. They rotate in a clockwise direction around areas of high pressure. So what you can do, and what I always urge pilots to do, is grab these charts and very quickly get your pen. And we know that the winds are going to rotate around low pressure like so. Is just draw on little arrowheads on the chart just showing us where the wind is coming from and where the wind is going to. And this is really handy to do both on the analysis charts and on the forecast charts as well. And what this is telling me is that the wind is, and well, was at midday today, coming in from a southwesterly direction. And what that does is tell me that it's coming off the Atlantic, so the air mass is going to be pretty moist. Also on here, we've got a cold front that was across eastern parts of England during this afternoon. Notice the pressure there. Each of the isobars tells us what the pressure is. This pressure is reduced to mean sea level on these charts. So this is a chart of mean sea level. So effectively, this is QNH. And notice the pressure there, 1,020 going through that cold front. That's pretty high pressure. So it's given us a clue that that front probably is not going to be that active. Now, that rule of thumb doesn't always work, but generally, the higher the pressure you've got going through the front, the weaker that front is likely to be. That's not going to say that it's not going to produce precipitation, and it may not have embedded cloud in there, embedded Q or QNIM in there, but it tells us that front is likely to be weak. And again, if you're looking at these fronts on forecast charts, you can use that rule of thumb to start making those predictions yourself. So we know this is a cold front, and cold fronts generally have narrow areas of heavier rain associated with them. But once we're getting to this pressure of 1,020 and above, you tend to think that that front is going to be very weak. And as I say, with the air mass coming in off the Atlantic, it's always going to be pretty moist. Now, as well as that on here, we have occluded fronts. So we've got two occluded fronts, one out towards the west of Ireland that was just in here, and we got another one that was out towards, well, actually it was west of Ireland as well. And you notice here that pressure was getting lower because we were getting closer to this low. Lower the pressure gets, the more active those fronts are likely to be. And when we look at occluded fronts, we generally think of a front about 100 miles across with some heavy bursts of rain within them. So that gave us a good idea as to what was going on out there this afternoon. And the fronts, the triangles and the semicircles and the triangles and the semicircles generally point in the direction to which the front is moving. So our cold front that was across the east is moving in was at midday today, moving in a generally east to southeasterly direction. So that was the general movement of the front, was in an east to southeasterly direction. And you can see that the actual triangles are pointing in that direction. So that gives us a rough clue as to where they're going. Now, the more perpendicular the fronts are to the isobars, the faster those fronts are likely to be moving. So, for example, in here, you'll notice that the isobars are perpendicular to the front. That means that the front is going to be blown along with the wind. Where the isobars are less perpendicular, so for example, our cold front here, actually a better example is the occluded front down here, we know that the front is generally going to be moving more slowly. So we can get a lot of clues from these charts. Incidentally, one of the other markings on there that all pilots need to be aware of are these. Can you see that solid line there without the front marked on? Again, we talk about these at weather school, so apologies to those who've been. Those are troughs. Troughs are areas of heavy showers, intense heavy showers, and sometimes thunderstorms. If you see a trough on a chart, you've got to be thinking about embedded Qs, embedded QNIMs as well on there. And really, you don't want to be flying in a trough. You want to allow the trough to pass through and then resume your flight, or fly ahead of the trough, well ahead of the trough, knowing hopefully that it's not going to catch up with you. But one area we don't want to be flying in are these troughs. They're just not pleasant areas at all, and we want to avoid them at all costs. So looking at the analysis chart from now actually enables us to get a good idea, a better impression as to what the weather is likely to be doing as we head into next week. Now, talking of that, pretty soon, the forecast charts that we get as surface charts from the Met Office are going to be looking ahead to Monday. That will be the first chart for Monday will come out. Let me just work this. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Monday will come out probably this evening, actually. Yeah, it'll be this evening. And I'll show you let me just work that out. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Yeah, it should come out this evening at about 9:30 this evening. We'll see one of these charts, the forecast charts for the first time. So on the forecast chart, what are we looking for? Top left-hand corner again. We want to take notice of what it says up here, because it says forecast chart T+24, valid 1200 UTC, Thursday, the 25th of March. That T+24 tells us it's a 24-hour forecast chart. And the data that it's based on was midday today, because 24 hours from midday today is midday tomorrow. And you notice there it tells us that that's the time of validity of this chart. So don't beat yourself up over fronts and what weather each front is going to bring. Think of fronts, for the majority of us as aviators, we can just think of fronts as areas of cloud and of rain. The higher the pressure the front goes into, the lighter the rain is likely to be, the less active the front is likely to be. So this is the forecast chart for midday tomorrow. There's an interesting line on there, which most of you have probably spotted already, and I'll talk about that in just a second. So what do we have? Well, as a forecaster, what I'm looking at on this chart immediately is to pick out my areas of cloud and rain associated with those fronts that we see marked on the charts. So let me just grab my little drawing tool here, and I'll draw on there for you the areas of rain. So what I'm going to look at on here, if I can do it, what I'm going to look at on here is areas of rain. And just imagining, and this is all I'm doing when I look at these charts, is I'm just imagining an area of rain surrounding that occluded front. Now, excuse my drawings first of all, but generally I'm thinking an occluded front rain is about 50 nautical miles ahead, 50 nautical miles behind. Most of us don't want to be flying in those conditions. Notice that the southern part of the front is headed towards high pressure, which is down here. The northern part of the front is in lower pressure, up here. So actually this northern part of the front is going to be stronger than that southern part of the front. Winds are coming in from off the Atlantic. Again, we can mark on what those winds are likely to be doing, because we've got low pressure here. So the winds will be rotating around in an anti-clockwise direction around our area of low pressure, like so. So again, we have a mostly southwesterly flow across the UK. Now that's moist. That means that there's going to be a lot of moisture. So actually there's probably going to be a fair amount of cloud. Even if we don't have a front close to us, there's likely to be a fair amount of cloud around and an area of rain coming in with that occluded front. Now, what else do we see on there? Well, an occluded front in the channel, and notice that this front has marked on it a plus symbol, just going through the middle of it here. You see it just in there, that plus symbol. So that means that that front is getting weaker. Whenever you see a plus symbol like that, it means the front is getting weaker. Okay, so that front is getting weaker. It's counterintuitive, isn't it? But the plus sign means that that front is getting weaker and is dying out. Now, we need to be aware that there could still be some cloud associated with it. There could still be rain associated with it, but that front is getting notably weaker over time. And in fact, the front that's over Scandinavia is doing the same thing. And this front down through Central Europe is doing exactly the same thing as well. Notice it's getting weaker as it's going into high pressure. Remember what I said? Higher the pressure, the weaker the front is going to be. That's exactly what's happening there. Now, there's a line marked on that chart, isn't there, across southern England. You see it there with the arrows coming off it, the little arrowheads that are coming off the front. That one just in there. Okay, that is a trough, so it's got heavy showers along it, but it's what we call a convergence line. So that's a convergence line, and what happens is along that we have heavy showers. So it's a trough. It still brings heavy showers. It can bring a risk of thunderstorms, although that's pretty high pressure for any thunderstorms to get going. So I'd probably say it's probably heavy showers tomorrow. But convergence lines tend to move very slowly. They're actually created by a slight shift in wind direction. So long as the upper atmosphere conditions are correct, the slight shift in wind direction creates that convergence line, and that's what that is. So they tend to move very slowly. They tend to be self-generating. So you would expect if you're flying across southern England tomorrow, that convergence line is in play, and it probably means that we'll get a few showers, generally quite frequent showers along that convergence line. You wouldn't expect it to move very far at all. So if we were flying in an airfield that was close to that area tomorrow, actually you wouldn't expect a great deal of change during the course of the day. Now, that was a 24-hour forecast chart. So if we were going to fly tomorrow, that 24-hour forecast chart becomes available during the preceding afternoon at about 5:30. We can get forecast charts going out to 120 hours from the Met Office. And this is why I said that the first chart for Monday probably will be available later on today. So what we should do as pilots is to use these charts, print them out, draw on the areas of rain surrounding the fronts. Also mark on your wind flow around the areas of high and low pressure, because that will tell us where the wind is coming from and where the wind is going to. As a rule of thumb, a wind coming off the Atlantic is always going to be moist, so you've got a higher risk of lots of cloud. A wind coming in off the continent generally is going to be drier. So getting familiar with using these forecast charts again, I think is absolutely key to getting us back into the air. So where do we get those forecast charts from? I've banged on about them, but where on earth are we actually going to be sourcing those charts from? Well, let me show you. Bear with me just a second and we will get there. Okay, so what we want, bear with me, is that one. And give me just 1 second. We'll get that up. If you go to weatherweb.net, and give me a second while I just click around the screen here. I have many windows open, and I need to make sure that I'm showing you the right one. Let's just get there. Okay, so what we need to do is to go to weatherweb.net, and at weatherweb.net, not that one because that's us on YouTube. So there we are, weatherweb.net. I knew that we'd get there eventually. There's weatherweb.net, and this is my site. Now, this section of it is free. If you go to models and charts, come down here to Met Office fronts and click on there. And there are the Met Office frontal charts. Now, you might say, well, why aren't you showing us the Met Office website when it's their charts? The reason for that is that they are not updating those charts as frequently. So, because I know that these charts are updated whenever they are updated, through the weatherweb.net site, these are more up to date. So, for example, if you go to the Met Office site now, you'll see the analysis chart is still the midnight analysis chart from last night. And they're still showing a forecast chart for midday today. So the charts are now out of date. But here, I know that they're always up to date. Now, what you can do is you can scroll through these charts just using the arrows here. You can download them, you can print them off. And what you can do is just scroll through. There's the 24-hour forecast chart for tomorrow. There's the 36. So this is the 36-hour for midnight tomorrow into Friday. There we are with midday on Friday. And notice this cold front going eastwards, look. We can track the progress of that. There is the forecast chart for midnight on Saturday. And there we are for midday on Saturday. A nice little ridge of high pressure building in on Saturday. So that little N shape here is a ridge of high pressure. High pressure areas, good flying areas. Notice though, flow is still coming in from the west or the southwest, and we go into more unsettled conditions then as we head into the weekend. And the 96-hour forecast and the 120-hour forecast, that's the chart for Sunday. The 96 and the 120-hour forecast update once daily at about 9:30 in the evening. Okay, so as a breakdown for you, just so you know these update times, the analysis chart and the T+24-hour forecast charts update 4 times a day. They update at 4:30, 10:30, 4:30 in the afternoon, and 10:30 at night. The 36-hour through to the 84-hour forecasts update twice a day. They update at 7:30 in the morning and 7:30 in the evening. And then the T+96, which is the 4-day, and the T+120, the 5-day, update once a day at 9:30 in the evening. If you missed that, don't worry, you can go back and watch the replay on YouTube. That'll be available soon. But again, those of you who've been to weather school will know that I give you a handout with the breakdown of all of that, so you can easily tell when these charts are updated. But I'd urge you to come to the weatherweb.net site, go to models and charts, click on Met Office Fronts. As I say, they're all free of charge, and just check these regularly now over the next few days. And when you are flying, even if it's not next Monday, start to check at least 4 days in advance as to what the weather is doing now. It will set you up for what the weather is going to be doing in the future. Now, the Skyway code mentions satellite pictures as well. You can get satellite pictures, again, from the weatherweb.net site. So while I'm there, I might as well show you these. If you go to radar and current, get a satellite, and click on any one of these options down here, you can get access to satellite pictures, which are updating and showing us the pictures every 15 minutes. If you leave that open on your desktop, the page refreshes automatically and will always give you the very latest image. So there are 2 types of satellite picture. Visible is like somebody's taken a camera into space and just taken a picture. Problem with that is that when it goes dark, like it is now, you don't get a picture. You only get a picture during daylight hours. And what you see there actually is the sun setting as night sets in across the UK. But if you click on the infrared option, so satellite there, can you see it says infrared? You'll be able to get pictures 24 hours a day. White on these shots is cloud, black is free of cloud. The whiter the cloud appears, the heavier the rain that's underneath the cloud, usually. Okay, if you've got a front and that's showing up on these infrared pictures as white cloud, it usually means that the rain is heavier underneath that front. Notice I used the term usually. Again, I stress this is meteorology, so there are no absolutes. But the whiter the cloud is, if you have a front, the heavier the precipitation is, usually underneath that front. You can also go and take a look at the radar picture as well. Just click on radar. Again, these are all completely free of charge. And there's the radar sequence for you, updating every 15 minutes. And if you leave it open, it will just automatically update for you. So that's satellite pictures. The other thing that the Skyway code recommends is that we familiarise ourselves again with forms 214 and 215. Again, it's something that 214, 215, I'm always aware when I go to the flying school that pilots do glance at 214 and 215, but they require a bit of practice to get used to. Now, there is a lot of information contained in 214 and 215. And again, at my YouTube channel, I actually did, for our last coming out of lockdown, I did a familiarization session on form 214 and 215. So go back on YouTube, have a look at that, watch that video, because I'll give you more information. But as a ready reckoner, when you're ready to fly, what do we look at on form 215? Okay, first up, look at the area that you want to be flying in. okay, and the area that you want to be flying to. That's always the first port of call. So I don't know, if I was going from Hackney Green and I was perhaps looking at flying down towards Shoreham, that's the route that I'm going to be taking. And immediately what I'm doing is I'm in area B, I'm looking that I'm going to be going into area C, and there's a cold front down there. We know that because we saw that on the analysis chart a little bit earlier on. So really all I'm interested in are areas B and C. Yes, there are fronts up towards the northwest. I'm going to assume that I'm not coming back on the same day, so I'm just looking for this outbound flight down towards the southeast. So as a real quick look at weather conditions, first up, I'm just going to look at area B, and I'm going to scan down and just see if there's anything on there that stands out under the surface fears and weather for me. It's telling me there 3,000 meters of mist over the land from 8 o'clock this evening, mostly in the far southeast. Okay, so I've just got to be aware that somewhere down here, there's probably going to be a little bit of mist during the course of this evening. So I'm going to be aware of that. It tells me here that there's a little bit of turbulence in the north, and easy, you don't have to remember that turbulence code because it's listed there for you, and it says isolated hill fog. Most of these regions, if there's cloud in the UK, will say hill fog because average cloud bases in the UK are below about 3,000 feet. So they're always going to shroud the highest hills anyway. What about heading towards that area D then? Just a quick scan of that will suffice. If I need to get it in more detail, I will. But a quick look at area C is telling me, and again, I just scan down. So what I'm doing here is I'm just scanning down there, and it tells me here that isolated an occasional over the front, we're looking at 7 kilometers in rain and drizzle. So that feature is not that active. It's only 7 kilometers that it's listed there. It's telling me as well that we could get 3,000 meters in rain and drizzle along the front, isolated. Yeah, that's kind of what it was saying up here. Isolated 200 meters in fog over the windward facing coast and hills. Well, the winds comes from the south west, so that's going to be along southern coasts of England. And it says occasional hill fog. Yeah, well, the cloud's going to shroud it. So that's telling me that actually as I head south, I should expect mistier, murkier conditions. Quick scan of the cloud base is 2,000 to 4,000 feet generally. Tops at 5,000 to 7,000 feet. Might be a little bit of scattered or broken stratus over land from 2000 Z. In area C, what's that base along that front? Lots of altitude and altostratus, those of us who are perhaps doing some IMC stuff. Widespread broken to overcast cumulus and stratocumulus. Base is about 1,500 to 2,000 feet. So 1,500 foot bases, don't really want to be flying in that VMC. And interestingly as well, look, they're listed there an icing risk too in that scattered to broken Q strat Q. Now, just mentioning icing, and there's only so much I can get in, and I'm aware I've run over in time already. You know what I'm like. Just talking about icing. Stratocumulus cloud, say an average base of 3,000 feet. Below it, we've got dry air. 3 degrees Celsius per 1,000 feet fall away in temperature in dry air. Temperatures below 9 degrees Celsius at the surface. Average cloud height of stratocumulus, 3,000 feet. If you've got 9 degrees at the surface, that means that by cloud base, because the air is cooling at a dry lapse rate, you're likely to find the cloud base at or below freezing. So there's an icing risk in cloud in the UK whenever surface temperatures are 9 degrees Celsius or below. So just something to be aware of there while we're talking about icing. Okay, what's the next thing? METARs. So we need to, again, familiarize ourselves with METARs and with TAFs. And best place to go for those still is the Met Office website. So you're going to all be registered for the aviation section of the Met Office website. METARs and TAFs, these update if you leave the page open, and there we are with the METARs. Main thing with the METARs and TAFs, main thing to look at if you've got an overall picture of what the weather's going to be doing, look for those Prob 30s and Prob 40s. In the UK, we only ever use Prob 30 and prob 40. We can't use any other probabilities. I always say, though, just be wary of them. If the forecaster is putting them in, it's not because he's trying to cover his backside. It's because he or she genuinely thinks that there is a reason for that being there, and there is a genuine chance that those conditions could occur. So I'm looking at the moment at Birmingham just because it's my local airfield, and I feel very selfish this evening just by looking at that. So I'm going to look at the Birmingham the Birmingham TAF, which is there, and immediately look, prob 30 sticking out, tempo 03208, broken 014. Remember that the cloud heights given in TAFs and in METARs are above airfield level, so they're above ground level. So it's telling me there's a fair chance at a prob 30 of a broken at 014 at 1400 feet. Something else while we're talking about probabilities in TAFs is that if it's talking about prob 30 showers, remember that the TAF only covers the airfield. So if you then get an aircraft and go flying around, you're going to go looking for those showers. So actually the probability of you coming across a shower is higher than it is on the TAF, unless you're just doing circuits. You're going to take off and you're going to go and try and find those showers. So the prob 30 naturally is higher because we're going to be flying around, and the chances of it hitting one of those showers is greater. Now, a shower doesn't really matter, but when it's saying prob 30 thunderstorm, it kind of starts to become pretty important. And remember as well that the winds that we see on the TAFs may appear stronger than most of us are experiencing when we step outside of our house. It's because airfields are wide open spaces. It's always going to be windier when you get to the airfield. So although you may think that the TAF has overplayed the wind, it usually hasn't. Talking of winds at airfields, this is not a criticism of airfields at all, but some of the wind equipment that we're now seeing at airfields is non-standard equipment, and it's not exposed at the level that you would want it to be. So as forecasters, we have a little bit of a difficulty with this, and no doubt some of you will see some of the anemometers that are at airfields at the moment actually quite low down. They should be, and when we're forecasting for the wind being 30 feet clear vertically of the nearest building or object. Now, you'll know that these days most anemometers at airfields are nowhere near that. So as pilots, we are getting underreported winds very often at airfields, lower than what we experience when we then taxi out to the runway. So always be aware of that. Check the windsock. Windsocks are actually usually pretty well more accurate than the reports that we get from air traffic control of wind. And again, that's not to denigrate air traffic control and the reports that they're giving or the airfields. It's more a case of just what happens out there. Use the windsock. If the windsock looks stronger than the report you're getting, the wind is stronger. Windsocks are usually in the more exposed parts of the airfield. Okay, and just finally, the other forecast that I think that we should get used to using before we go flying, and it's worth looking at. There's some hidden information in here. Again, is at the Met Office website. If you come down to regional forecasts, and that one there, that GAMET or GAMET that's in there, click on there. These are new forecasts which have replaced AirMets. Now, I have to say, I don't think they're a patch on AirMets that went before, but it's what we've got. It's what we can use. These forecasts updated 4 times a day, and they're useful for flying today and tomorrow. So, for example, the GAMET that we see this evening has an outlook for tomorrow. So if you click on them, and we've got the southeast, southwest, central and northern regions, just click on them and you'll see there that, and they don't look particularly very friendly. The regions are shown here on the map for you. And again, just get used to using these. There's a little bit of forecastese in there. Forecasters do like to use acronyms and so forth. But it's worthwhile just having a look at. It's useful for getting an idea of freezing levels. It's useful for looking at the overall situation. And it's also handy for giving us a broader look at the weather in the region that we may be planning on flying in short term. But one of the beauties of these gametes is if we just scroll down, you have the winds and you have the temperatures at various different heights. And again, I'd urge you just to go and have a look at this. But it's this that I find most useful. So, for example, this evening, we've got a regional outlook here, look, valid between 06 and 1200 UTC tomorrow. And it just gives us a brief summary of what's going to go on. And it says fog and mist clearing by 0800 and showery rain moving into the area from 0900. So you know you've got a good idea as to what conditions are likely to do. But it then gives us an extended outlook for 24 hours. So this goes from midday tomorrow to midday on Friday. And it's for the whole of the UK, but it gives us a broad outlook as to what's likely to go on. And what's good about this is that we can then look at our forecast chart and apply what we're reading there to that forecast chart. So I'd urge you to go and have a look at those. And again, this is a case of if you don't use it, lose it, I think, because if they see that we aren't using those as pilots, I think we may lose, or we could lose that service. I'm not saying we definitely would, but all these things cost money, of course. And if they're not being used, there would definitely be pressure there to get rid of that service. So you find that under regional forecasts and then click on gametes. And you know what? If it's there, we might as well use it, hadn't we? So that's what I would be looking at and familiarizing myself with. Now, the Skyway code then goes on to say this. Let me just share that with you. Let's try again. Okay, it says that when we're making the weather call as pilots, even for local flights, you should have a good understanding of the general weather conditions before you go flying, particularly how the weather may evolve during the flight. So we do that using the analysis chart. We use the satellite, we use the radar, we use 215 and 214 for the winds. And just a note on 214, I've not brought it up here tonight, but remember those winds are above sea level. So the winds that we see on form 214, these winds, these are flight level winds. So they're above sea level. Just remember that. I mean, it's useful to know if you've got a higher airfield. Those are flight level winds. So the Skyway code says that we should have a good understanding of local of weather conditions, the general weather conditions, before we go flying. It's not good enough to look out the window and say, yeah, it should be okay, and off you go. I actually heard somebody this morning here, I'm based just outside Halkney Green. I heard somebody trying to head south this morning as that cold front was clearing away, got caught out in low cloud and had to make a diversion call back into Halkney Green. The forecast was spot on. The weather was doing exactly what it was supposed to be doing. I'm not sure there was a good enough awareness of flying conditions. Somebody nearly got very severely caught out. Cloud bases were about 1,200 feet. And then that leads me on to this point, which is where it clearly states that VFR flight is where the surface visibility is reported as, VFR flight when the surface visibility is being reported at less than 5 kilometers is not recommended. And I absolutely stick to that rule. So when I'm doing the flyer forecasts, I generally think of, and you'll hear me say the term VFRable, I think of the term VFRable as being greater than 5 kilometers and a cloud base that's going to be 3,000 feet or above. That's my general idea of what are VFRable conditions. Yes, if we've got 20K and 2,000 feet, absolutely fine. Below that perhaps starts to become a bit of a problem. And when I'm thinking about those VFR conditions for the flyer forecast, I generally think, okay, what's going to be an enjoyable flight? What's going to be not too challenging? That's what I use when I'm talking about those VFR conditions. So I hope that has been useful for you this evening. Happy to answer questions. I know that we've got a few that have come through, so I'm going to have a quick read through those and just see if I can answer some of those questions for you. Anybody got any more? Please do feel free to add to them. I'm going to be putting the recording of this on the YouTube site, so it's at youtube.com/weather school. Some of you watching on YouTube already, many of you watching on Zoom, but you can go back and watch a recording. As I say, I'm collecting at the moment for the big issue, and it would be brilliant if you can make a donation to the big issue at justgiving.com/weather school webinar. That's the address to head to there. And just before I answer the questions, a plug for Weather School. I've got my next Aviation Weather School Part 1. I know many of you have been on Part 1, and I see there the names of people, and I know that you've done Part 2 as well. Those of you who've not been to Aviation Weather School yet, what's it about? It's about planning the weather confidently 5 days in advance and being able to spot weather windows. I've rapidly gone through the charts, etc., with you this evening, but we take our time at Weather School, go through it methodically, and it's great to get the interaction that you can ask all the questions that you need to as well. So my next course, and they fill up pretty quickly, as you know, my next course with places is on the Saturday mornings of the 15th and 22nd of May between 09:30 and 12:30 hours. And I do it over these 2 Saturday mornings, so you can basically do weather in the morning, fly in the afternoon. But also what it does is enable the information I give to you to be able to bed in. You also get to watch a recording of the session, and it's all presented live by me, but you can then watch a recording of each of these sessions to pick up anything that you may have missed. And then during the week, I send you out analyses and forecasts, and we kind of have a bit of banter about your improvements in forecasting, what you're seeing as well, and your ideas of the various different charts. And I kind of not mark them, but give you pointers as to how you can improve your forecasting. And it's all about building your confidence in being able to forecast yourself as well. So go and find out more at weatherschool.co.uk, and you can book your place there now. And of course, that's my social media details there, and be great to see you on Twitter, Instagram, or on Facebook. Any one of those, I'd be great to see you there. Very much welcome you there. Okay, so don't forget the donation, please, to the big issue. And again, a big thank you to Cav OK, who got in, made their donation to the big issue. It was great of them to do that. Cav OK, the UK's leading hour building organisation, they say. And you can book online at cavok.co.uk. Follow them on Instagram as well. Always interesting to see what they're doing. Okay, let's have a look then at questions. Let's have a look, see who's got questions for me. Clears and cobwebs, fantastic, very useful information. Okay, surface pressure charts on which showed the convergence. It's very useful for glider pilots. Can you explain what creates the phenomena? Chris Jones asking that question. Okay, Chris, so convergence lines basically mean the convergence of the winds. If we get unstable air, so unstable air, what does that mean? It's a sharp temperature change from lower levels to higher levels. So what we call a sharp lapse rate. The temperature basically falls quickly with highs. That's unstable air. And in unstable air, we can get large cumulonimbus clouds building. And when this something happens to trigger those cumulus and cumulonimbus clouds. Now, as we get through late spring and into summer, that's usually the heating of the ground. But you can also get this kind of lift caused by slight changes in wind direction. And the wind basically comes together. If you imagine at one location, the wind is perhaps coming from 270 degrees, at another location coming from 250 degrees, that coming together of the wind can just be enough to cause air to rise. And if we've got enough cooling with height, that will enable cumulus and cumulonimbus clouds to build, which is why we get the showers. it's actually a situation called conditionally unstable air. And what conditionally unstable air basically is that air that's quite happy to exist as it is, unless something comes along to give it a little bit of a nudge that can enable these cumulus clouds to grow. I kind of think of conditionally unstable air as, imagine a huge beach ball with a tennis ball balanced on the top. Now, everything's fine if you can balance that tennis ball on top of the beach ball. You're cleverer than me. But if you can do that, as long as all the other conditions remain the same, that tennis ball stays on top of the beach ball. But if anything happens at all, the tennis ball will roll away. You know, you could knock it. It could be a vibration in the floor. It could be the wind. It will knock it and the ball will fall off. That's conditionally unstable. The ball is stable on top of the beach ball, provided and on condition that no other factors change. And in conditionally unstable air, that change is actually the wind direction. Hopefully that explains that to you, Chris. There's a far more technical explanation, but that's it. David Kavanagh says, is temperature minus dew point multiplied by 400 a reasonable, accurate way to calculate the cloud base? And is it based on nautical height? It is, David. It's based on height above ground level. It's a good way of doing things, but only for convective cloud. So only for things like cumulus, probably stratocumulus and cumulonimbus. It's not good for low cloud like nimbus stratus and stratus. Okay, but for most of the cloud that we're going to fly in, which is going to be cumulus, cumulonimbus, or well, hopefully not cumulonimbus, stratocumulus, then yeah, that's a good way to estimate, and it's only an estimate. Always go with what the official forecasts say, because there are so many other factors that can go into play. Andrew says about using the scale in the top left. We talk about this at Weather School, Andrew. It's a geostrophic wind scale. And what it enables you to do is to measure the distance between the isobars, look at the latitude that you're at, hold it up against the scale, and then estimate what we call the geostrophic wind speed. And then you can make adjustments that enable you to forecast the surface wind and the 3,000 foot wind and wind direction and speed, I should say, from that scale. Bit too long to go into, but come to Weather School, Andrew, and I explain all that, and you can do it in seconds. Is it possible to get charts that cover a smaller geographical area, so more detail for the UK? I'll show you in just a second that one, Martin. Chris says, how do you predict the wind speeds? Again, we use that geostrophic wind scale. And Mark says, what's the cold front with the dots? So there was a cold front with dots, and I can't remember which one it was. There are little dots going through it. That means that front is getting stronger. Remember, the plus was the front is getting weaker. The dots mean that the front is getting stronger. Now, have a little bit further down. David Morman says, my wife knows your voice so well, listening in bed every Monday and Thursday. I don't know what to say to that. Philip Strangwood. Hiya, Philip. Hope that you're doing well. A Weather School trooper there. What's the best website to get SKU-T diagrams from? Go to weatheronline.co.uk for that. I'm going to be adding them onto our website soon, but I will show you, Philip, just to refresh your memory. If you go to weatherschool.co.uk, sorry, not Weather School. What am I saying? I'm obsessed with Weather School. If you go to weatheronline.co.uk, come down to expert charts, and under soundings here, we've got GFS. And again, we do so much on SKU-Ts on Weather School Part 2. You've seen me go on about SKU-Ts. This is what I would show every pilot when we're doing our PPL Met. This is really useful stuff. SKU-Ts enable you to forecast cloud bases and tops and freezing levels and winds for up to sort of 7-8 days in advance. That's the SKU-T for Cambridge. It's basically a height versus temperature graph, and you can look at it immediately. Looking at that one, for example, I know that we've got stratocumulus cloud at about 3,000 feet, tops are about 4,000 feet, with a southwesterly wind at about 10 knots at the surface, 20 knots at about 3,000 feet, and we've got a freezing level on that one at about 8,000 feet. And I also know that if we took off, we'd be in clear skies up to cloud base at about 3,000 feet, as I say, we'd come out of it about 4,000 feet, it's broken cloud, and above it we'd be in completely clear skies. I show you how to do that at Weather School Part 2. But you can also do my online course, A Pilot's Guide to Scutees, at weatherschool.co.uk. It's a recorded course, but you can do that, and it fully explains Scutees to you as well. So yeah, Philip, that's where I would go for your Scutees. Okay, I was telling you about the frontal charts as well. I know some of you are already members of weatherweb.net, premium members. So weatherweb.net is for people who need to know more information about weather. And the flyer videos, we do the equivalent at weatherweb.net every day, which is the fast forecast, and that goes out every afternoon, and it gives you the forecast out for the next 5 days. Also at weatherweb.net, we've got our own frontal charts, and if you go to models and charts, come down to WX Web fronts. These are the fronts that you see on flyer, and these are more zoomed in for the UK, and we update these every day going ahead for the next 6 days. So there is the forecast chart for Monday. And those of you looking to fly on Monday, this is what we are going to be facing on Monday. We've got a southwesterly flow across the country. We've got this front that's trailing back through England, through Wales, and into southern parts of Ireland, bringing cloud, bringing outbreaks of rain with it. It's a tropical maritime air mass. And again, I know that those of you who have been to weather school will know that that means low cloud, drizzle, poor visibility, non-flying conditions. And I think that's the way it's going to be for many western and southern coasts of the UK. So sort of Southern Ireland, Western Wales, probably coasts of southwest England, could be the coasts of southern England, that sort of area. Looks like we've got low cloud and some drizzle. Now it's going to be breezy as well, but I do think that across central areas, probably East Anglia, parts of southern England, northeast England, I think it's probably flyable. I think we're looking at bases about 3,000 to 4,000 feet in those areas. The only concern I have is that I think it's going to be turbulent in those areas. So there will be quite a bit of turbulence. The winds are going to be gusting as well. Scotland, gusty winds in the east. I think that's going to make it probably marginal for most with those gusty winds. Could be 25 to 28 knot gusts. Western Scotland, probably non-VFRable because of heavy showers. Central and Northern Ireland, looking okay at the moment, but that moist southwesterly flow, remember what I said, anything coming in off the Atlantic is pretty moist. So that's how Monday looks at the moment. It is changing. There's been some shifts in that front, how far north and how far south it was over the last few days, but that's what it's looking like just at the moment. And as I say, we update those charts every day at weatherweb.net, and we've also got a special aviation forecast section as well. If you go to forecasts, come down to aviation weather there, you can put in your ICAO code. It'll bring up your details, click on that, and you get a forecast for your location as well. So that's information is there, and you've got a planning outlook for the next few days as well, actually for the next week, and all the frontal charts are there as well. You get that all as part of your subscription to weatherweb.net. You can get a free 3-day trial as well. If you get a premium member, click on join now, and you can get in fact, if we do on subscription options, will it show it? It's trying its best. There we go. You can get a free 3-day trial of that as well. So that's all there for you too. So that's weatherweb.net. Okay, did I miss any questions? Let me just have a look at the chat window, and I'll have a quick look at YouTube as well in just a second. What sort of changes? Yeah, Michael, we added those extra locations for Scutees, and I'm looking to get them onto the weather website as well. What sorts of changes will trigger species or TAFs amended being issued? Okay, Andrew, there are a set number of conditions that will do that. Obviously, a significant change in the forecast, and if a forecaster sees that the forecast is going astray, he can get in and issue those amended TAFs. Hopefully it's not a regular thing to get those amended TAFs in, but the forecaster has the ability to do that. The species are special reports when conditions go outside certain parameters. If you do a search, Andrew, for WMO, that's the World Meteorological Organization, TAF and specie amendments, you'll see there the whole list of what can trigger a specie report being issued. Yeah, Michael, that front right over Sherborne. Yeah, sorry about that. And David, just saying there about his wife listening to me in bed, says it's her claim to fame. Super. Okay, let's just have a look and make sure I've not missed anything. Amanda says, oh, Simon, you're brilliant. Thanks for the clear explanation and pointers. Absolute pleasure. And is there any other questions from anybody? I know that we've run over here, but hopefully it's been worthwhile and just giving you a few pointers and a few tips. Have I missed anything? I don't think I have. Okay, I'll give you just a second, just in case anybody's got any other questions. Brilliant. Okay, as I say, the recording is going to be available to you via YouTube, so that would be available for you to view whenever you want to. Thanks to Cavoco for making their donation and for supporting the this webinar. Those are the details you need to donate to the big issue. It'll be great to see you at weather school sometime. Oliver Kennedy says you should be on TV. Oliver, go and do a search for my name and put GMTV or BBC next to it. You might be surprised with what you see. Yeah, really good to see you. Okay, I'll be on with the Flyer team tomorrow night at 7:30. I'm live again. Mark saying thanks for the refresher, waiting for part 3 to be announced. Mark, Weather School part 3 is written. It's ready to go. It's just a case of sorting out the dates. Part 3, what we're going to do is we're going to do some sample flights. And we're going to fly around. We're going to look at the weather charts, and we're really going to get under the fingernails of it on part 3. So as soon as it's ready, I'll get Kate to send you the details. So yeah, I'll be on with the weather with the Fly team at 7:30 tomorrow night. So I'll see you there. I'm just seeing if I've missed anything I need to tell you about. No, please do go make the donation to the big issue. And I think that's it. Okay, have a great evening. If you can fly, I am so envious of you. Because I'm still dual training, so I've got to wait until the 12th of April. Fly safe, won't you? I hope that it's great for you. No doubt we're all going to be a little bit rusty, but boy, it can't come quick enough, can it? Looking forward to it. And as I say, I'll have the latest forecast for Monday online for you tomorrow. Yeah, great to see you all. Okay, I'll leave you with that for now. As I always say, thanks again for watching. Keep the sun shining, and bye for now, everybody. Have a great evening. See ya. Bye-bye.